Hey everybody, it's Professor Parrish, and we are on week 13 of English 122. So I just wanted to go over what we're doing this week in class with you all and make sure that you all kind of understood what we're doing this week, because we do have an extra assignment. Normally we only have 2 assignments per week. This week we do have 3. So it is coming off of Easter and everything else happening in the previous week. So I want to make sure I go over everything with you all and that it's all clear. So as you can see, we've got our module guide, the discussion, the drama analysis, and the comedy and tragedy quiz. And we're going to talk about comedy and tragedy as well. So looking at the guide here, there are a few different things I want you to read in our textbook. One is looking at tragedy and comedy, which we will talk about very soon. One is the scene from Dr. Faustus. One is the scene from The Importance of Being Earnest. And these are not the full plays. They're just scenes from them or acts of them, right? And then writing effectively on pages 1193 to 1195. So also reviewing the materials, taking the quiz, and submitting your drama analysis to the Dropbox and making sure that it's 3 to 5 pages long and in correct MLA format. And it should have a works cited page. So, and then you have your discussion forum. So there's quite a lot to do this week, more so than usual. So I want to make sure we go over it and that everybody is clear on what we're doing. But we're first going to go to the discussion. So this week's discussion, in this week's notes, there's going to be some sample films that illustrate what different forms of comedy might look like. And so I want to know your comedy and tragedy terms. I want you to apply one of the tragedy or comedy terms that we talk about to a play, a film, or a TV show that you like. You have to add examples. So explain to me how it proves that your term is illustrated. So we'll go over some examples and I'll come back to this discussion forum after we do that. Your drama analysis is your paper on drama. We talked about the guidelines last week in that lecture video, if you need to go back and rewatch that one. But this is where you'll turn in your drama paper. It is out of 100 points, so please make sure if you turn anything in this week, you make sure to get that paper turned in because that's a big chunk of your grade. So if you've got questions about the drama analysis, please just let me know. So, and then we have the comedy and tragedy quiz. As per usual, it's just 10 questions. There's no time limit, and you can use your notes from your book, obviously, to do this quiz. So we're going to talk about tragedy and comedy, and then we're going to come back and go back to that discussion forum. But with tragedy and comedy, there are different dramatic genres, right? So a tragedy is a play that depicts a serious conflict between a person and something that's often more powerful than themselves. Usually these end badly. Shakespeare loved tragedies and loved to make them end in lots of people dying. And usually, even if it's not death, it can lead to financial despair. It can lead to people getting separated. It can lead to romances dying out or being broken up. So usually the ending is not a happy one. Whereas comedy is a play just for amusement. The main character usually moves from bad fortune to good, or a series of events happen and hilarity ensues, and they end up having a pretty good conclusion. So comedies are kind of the opposite of tragedies. Many characters have different things called tragic flaws. You can examine characters. They're usually protagonists that suffer from a tragic flaw, which is usually an error or a weakness on their part. So we have the main character from The King of Staten Island, but you can look at other characters from other series too. I would say you could look at Hamlet. Classic Shakespeare. One of Hamlet's biggest problems is that they're very proud and they don't want to consider the ideas of other people. They gotta get in their own brain way too much, right? That's kind of their tragic flaw. Another tragic flaw might be if somebody's an overly proud character and doesn't want to admit that they're wrong. It could lead to their downfall as well. So there are also different types of comedy. So there are things called high comedy, where high comedy is a genre that evokes thoughtful laughter from an audience in a response to the play's depiction of the folly, the pretense, and the hypocrisy of human behavior. So I Care a Lot, which is an example of this, Rosamund Pike, who's here in the yellow, she got a Golden Globe for that performance. I also think of like Lucille Bluth in Arrested Development. She's kind of an example of high comedy where she makes these snarky, quick-witted remarks that are kind of a play on like the rich older woman in society, right? So that's an example. There's also satiric comedy, which is used derisive humor to ridicule human weakness and folly or to attack political injustices or incompetence. So Borat is a classic example of satire. I would say South Park rides the line of satire. There are some episodes I would say are satire and some I would say are more farce. But Borat is basically trying to make a statement talking about political injustices, and he uses it by a character that's kind of ridiculous to point out how ridiculous the system is. That's kind of an example of that. There is a comedy of manners, where it's a realistic form of a high comic drama. It deals with social relations, romantic intrigues, sophisticated upper-class men and women. It's like a witty Victorian novel that is talking about the interesting social relations. It's like Downton Abbey. If Downton Abbey was a comedy, that's a comedy of manners. Then we have romantic comedy. One of my favorites is Love Actually. It is a form of comic drama in which the plot focuses on one or more pairs of young lovers who overcome difficulties to achieve a happy ending. Love Actually is the most classic example of this. I love Love Actually, but you probably know a romantic comedy that would fit this genre as well. Then there's what we call low comedy. Low comedy is it arouses laughter through jokes, slapstick antics, sight gags, boisterous clowning, and vulgar humor. Joe Dirt's a pretty good example. Anything by Adam Sandler is pretty low comedy. It's very surface level. It's not you're not gonna have to know a lot of references to get the jokes in a low comedy. Then there is the burlesque, which is a broadly humorous parody or tragedy of another play or kind of play. It can be, burlesque means a little bit something different in the U.S. You may be thinking of Cher. But Charlie Chaplin often did a burlesque, which was like a humorous take on a tragedy. It was turning a tragedy into a comedy, essentially. Then there is farce, which is a broadly humorous play whose action is usually fast-moving and improbable. So again, South Park could run in the gambit of this at times. Home Alone is very much farcical. It's nonsensical humor, but it's still pretty funny. Then there's slapstick comedy, so like Itchy and Scratchy from The Simpsons, Ren and Stimpy. It's a farce that features pratfalls, pie throwing, fisticuffs, and violent action. Even Tom and Jerry, I think, would be a slapstick comedy. So questions to ask about tragedy and comedy. Why does the text get a reaction from people? Why does it make us laugh? Why does it make us cry? Does the text ring true? Why? Is the text really relatable? Why or why not? How does the use of emotion advance the text's theme? Why or why not? And then how does the text establish boundaries for appropriateness? Is it an appropriate text? Why or why not? So those are kind of questions to ask about tragedy and comedies as you're writing your paper. So in going back to this discussion, I would say that you need to tell me, like, a show or TV or play. It doesn't have to be, it could be one that you've been recommended, one that you watch. It needs to be an example of tragedy or comedy. And it needs to be a specific example. So if you use like Rocko's Modern Life, that's a slapstick. If you say Tom and Jerry, that's a slapstick. If you use something like Joe Dirt, it would be a low comedy. If you do something like Arrested Development, it's a high comedy. So if you're concerned or you're not sure how to classify one and you can't do it yourself, you probably could look up examples of low comedy or examples of high comedy and find those examples online to talk about in this discussion forum. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out via email and ask. I am happy Monday through Friday. I am happy to answer your emails. Usually on Saturday and Sunday, I'm away from my computer, if I'm honest. So I may not get to your emails quite as often on the weekend, but during the week, I will get to them every day. So please let me know if you have any questions, but I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and you can see on here the examples for next week's assignments as well. But in the meantime, I'll talk to you again soon with more with English 122. Bye.